And we're back. The Finding Strength podcast. I'm getting comfortable today.
Jump right in, baby.
I'm getting comfy. So today we are going to do our episode on shame.
Shame.
I keep singing. Go. Do you know the whole song?
No.
That's all you know, huh?
No.
Because that's all I know of that whole song. I don't even know who sings it. Anyways, so yeah, shame. Are you excited to talk about shame today?
Ugh, got a pit in my stomach. Must be feeling some shame.
Why are you feeling shame?
Why am I feeling shame?
Yeah, what'd you do?
Because when you talk about shame, you feel the effects of it.
I know when you said I have a pit in my stomach, I was like, oh, I do too.
It's
and I'm
crazy.
like, oh, it's the feeling of shame.
Interestingly, as we're coming up here today to record and do all this stuff, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror and thinking about shame and thinking about my inner critic, which we're going to talk about today too. And I start to notice that I'm really irritable and I'm more short than I usually am. And I'm going like, what is going on? What is wrong with me?
Yep.
And then I start getting mad at myself like, dude, stop.
Like, don't be mad.
What the hell's
you
wrong
don't
with
need to
you?
be mad. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I realized like, oh, that's the inner critic. Like, oh, well, I should apply some of this stuff we talk about all the time. And I had a moment where you have to, and the reality is like, I have to step back.
Yeah. And you did. I watched you.
Yeah. That's why I was turning on music
Yep.
and kind of change some stuff up. And yeah. And it's a hard thing because we have these feelings for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
All feelings exist to do something for us in some way.
Yep.
Shame is no different.
Yep.
And shame's kind of got a bad rap. So I think why I wanted to do this episode, I'll speak for myself personally, is I want to give shame its due process in court.
Okay.
Let's be real here, okay?
Yeah.
Because is shame bad?
Do you want my answer?
What do you think?
No. I don't.
No. Why not? Why don't you think shame is bad? Because shame, we talk about shame like you should never feel shame. If you feel shame, something is wrong. Is that really true?
No. I think shame is a teacher. I think it teaches us. I should say, I think it teaches me individually. Do I have a hard time with it sometimes? Absolutely. Especially when I feel like other people have created the shame feeling that I'm feeling.
Sure.
But again, I think that's when I have to look inward and be like, okay, why am I feeling this? And how can I go about like learning from it or whatever? Yeah. But no, I don't think it's a bad feeling.
Awesome.
I think we all need to. I think one thing is, well, no one's going to escape it. Everyone, it is part of this human experience. Everyone will feel shame, which sucks.
Yeah.
But also it teaches you. So it's like a beautiful disaster, you know?
Yeah. One thing that in shame, so we're going to use a lot of Brene Brown research today, stuff from Kristen Neff, some from researchers all over the place that are really good at talking about shame. I'm sure recovery stuff will come up.
Matt Quackenbush stuff about shame.
Sure, I have my own theories, right? One of the things we know about shame, so there's emotions that are naturally occurring, and then there's emotions that are called manufactured emotions. And manufactured, you'll notice that word man is there.
It's always the men.
But we create it. We create shame. Shame is an emotion that it does naturally exist. It occurs. But in the moment when I'm feeling shame, it's being manufactured because of my experience.
Because of your beliefs.
My beliefs.
Yep.
So let's define shame.
Yep.
Read the definition?
Yep. Let's define shame.
The manufactured emotion of shame is...
Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Now, this is Brene Brown's
definition of shame,
which I think she puts it so...
It's my favorite one.
Beautifully.
It's the only one that I use, and I've brought in others before. But I've done groups and talks and all sorts of stuff. And Brene's stuff just seems to be... the stuff that I connect with the most when it comes to shame.
Well, she researched it.
And
like,
she developed the shame.
Through research.
This is shame resilience theory.
Yeah.
And she also is incredible at being able to break things down. And her definition, there is so much happening in this one sentence we have to break it down.
Yeah,
we
let's
have
break
to
it down.
we have to break down every little
Yeah.
piece of this puzzle. So the first thing that we learn about shame is that it is what? What is shame? Shame is
Painful feeling.
it's
Or
an emotion.
experience. Yeah, it's an
It's
emotion. Yeah. Feeling.
And this emotion, this feeling is what? Intense and painful. But she also throws in this other word here, the intensely painful feeling or experience. So what we learn here is that the feeling of shame itself can also be and is often experiential. It's this experience of feeling intense pain that leads me to believe some stuff that may or may not be true. And the thing that's creating this intensely painful experience is a belief that I am
Flawless.
Flawed.
Flawed.
So
Not
there's
flawless. Flawed.
there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. I'm damaged. I'm not good enough, right? There's some lacking thing about me. And because I believe that there's this lacking thing about me, I'm now feeling this feeling. Okay? And because I feel this feeling and because I am flawed, this is what makes shame so insidious. Because of all that belief stuff that I'm broken, I am now unworthy of love and belonging, the two most important elements to humanness.
Yep.
And so you can actually take this whole thing and you can flip it. And what we're really saying is, I'm feeling this painful feeling. I'm having this painful experience because I believe that I'm flawed. And if I weren't flawed, I wouldn't have this painful feeling or this experience. And in order for me to be worthy of love and belonging, I can't be flawed. Should we break that down?
Ow, that hurts.
So really, and this is Brene Brown's greatest contribution through research, is it's actually about perfectionism.
Yeah, because we are all flawed. We're human beings.
Right.
Like no one's perfect.
And the antidote to shame is to be empathic and self-compassionate, which we will talk more about. We're actually probably going to do a future episode, probably the next education episode, whatever we want to call these. It will be on self-compassion.
Self-compassion, which is huge.
Which is an antidote to shame.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, it is.
But
yeah.
so what we learn is that shame is also deeply rooted in perfectionism.
Whew.
So
Which is so unattainable. Perfectionism is unattainable. And
but if you believe that it is attainable and that you should be this thing, this standard, and uphold this standard, guess what you're going to feel all the time?
shame.
And you're going to overcompensate for that with what?
People pleasing.
People pleasing, being a chameleon.
Yeah.
And so what a lot of people who are perfectionists feel is they feel a ton of shame all the time, but it shows up as this feeling of being a fraud.
Yeah. Because they don't want to really be seen. Because they're showing up as something else. Like, oh no, this is what I really am. One really behind closed doors. This is what they really are.
Yeah, because I end up believing that I'm not worthy of the two most important things of humanness, love and connection. So in order to be worthy of love, I got to be perfect. In order to be connected, I got to be perfect. Or I have to trick the people around me into believing that I am so that they don't reject me.
Yes.
And that's shame's inherent goodness, if you will, sort of, kind of. It's this naturally occurring feeling that keeps me wanting to stay connected. But the manufactured part of it is believing that I have to be perfect in order to stay connected.
It's just so much.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Like, yeah. And I'm just so glad I never wanted to like be perfect.
Yeah, but don't you think there are things that you do sometimes where you feel like you miss the mark or fall short, and that's where you feel
100%.
shame?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be also be considered perfectionism? I'm not good enough.
Damn it, Matt. Yeah.
Well, what is that for you? I can tell you for me what it is, but what is that for
I
you?
don't know. What is it for me?
Well, I don't. I can say for me. I don't know for you.
I want to know what your opinion is of what it is for me. What is it for you?
For me,
Yeah.
well, this should come as no surprise. I need to be viewed, seen as smart. As a young boy, that was just freaking jammed into me that being intelligent is like ultra important. And so if I'm viewed as, seen as intelligent and people see me that way, then I'm worthy of love and connection.
Yeah. Ow. That's deep.
And so guess what? The opposite is I'm dumb.
Yeah.
And so moments where I'm dumb and I feel like I'm dumb, I do this behavior to compensate,
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
which is what? What do I do?
No, keep going.
I got to be right.
Yeah.
I can't be wrong because if I'm wrong, I'm not smart and I'm dumb. And so I argue and get defensive. And that has created more problems in our relationship than literally anything else.
No, I'm parenting.
Well, because I'm right with parenting.
No,
I know
you're
about
not.
parenting because I'm the expert. And if you don't do what I think in parenting, then our kids are doomed and you don't trust me. And because you don't trust me, I'm not good enough and you're eventually going to reject me. All that's background noise.
I'm saying that is shame writing your story right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And shame can create such a story, right? And then we believe it and then we live like that. And then we are not, I feel like, living our best selves or happy, when you're constantly feeling shame for not being good enough. I feel like maybe one of my, I have a smart one too. Like, not that I want to be seen as smart. I just don't want to be seen as dumb. Mm-hmm. So mine's kind of a little bit opposite of yours.
It's the same vein though. Yeah.
But it is the same vein. And then definitely probably have some shame stuff of like showing up as, this certain way as a mom, for sure. I definitely put myself on this pedestal.
How your kids see you.
How my kids see me and stuff like that. And not that I don't care if my kids get mad at me. Like, sure. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't have this friend situation problem with my kids. I'm not your friend. If you're mad at me, then I'm probably doing something good, right? But am I making my kids feel loved? That's probably where I get stuck in a shame cycle because my mom did such a good job and I can't fulfill her shoes.
That's such a powerful shame story. I won't ever live up to. I won't
measure up to her.
Yeah. And these are the stories that you discover about yourself. And you just, what shame work ends up being really work in general, like on yourself and how you see the world and who I am as a person. You're just kind of poking holes in these stories. Right?
Yeah.
And realizing that like, well, okay, intelligence, is that really the thing that I want? Do I want people to see me as smart? Maybe, but more importantly, I just want to be accepted.
Yeah.
And I found this thing that's actually a strength of mine, and I've used it to gain a lot of acceptance. So I'm going to double down on this strength. And if I'm not seen in this way, then I'm probably going to be rejected. And that's the thing that matters when it comes to understanding shame, is shame wants you to stay connected. Mm-hmm. It doesn't want you to get disconnected. And it's this mechanism that exists in nature that's keeping you connected. And so this feeling of being afraid of being unworthy of love and belonging can be motivating to get you to stay connected, but it depends on how you do it, because there's two ways. One, I could fake it and pretend and be a chameleon and lie to everybody so that I get seen a certain way. Or we can take shame and we can turn it into guilt. Mm-hmm. And what that looks like is shame is about who I am, right? I am bad. There's something fundamentally wrong with me, and that is why I'm being rejected. When in reality, what I can do is I can say, well, actually, maybe this is not so much about me as it is about what I'm doing, my behavior.
Yeah.
And guilt is about behavior, whereas shame is about an idea of self. And so I can say this thing that I do isn't serving me. It's not helping me. Yeah. Let's do something different. The thing that I'm doing is what's creating this disconnection from other people. So let's kind of change what I do, or maybe even let's evaluate whether or not I want to be connected to this group of people who needs me to show up a certain way. What if I could just show up authentically? And now we begin to realize that like, oh, authenticity is where it's at. Mm-hmm. Maybe me showing up and doing the things that I want to do authentically as me will help me stay connected to myself and to the world and to those around me.
Yeah. Well, in here it talks about like shame is a fear-based emotion.
Mm.
And so we're driven by fear, connecting it to shame. If self-compassion is self-love, self-shame is self-fear. I fear what I could become without my shame to keep me back. It prevents me from what I perceive as failure. Shame holds us back from our failure. Love has no requirements. Shame does. I think that's huge. Love has no requirements, but shame does because it's run by fear. And so we have these fearful stories of ourselves instead of being our authentic self, which I think is also like living authentically is scary. So is that also connected to fear because we're scared to be our authentic selves and be seen the way we really are, our true selves? But that's scary because what if we get rejected? And it's like, oh no. So then I go back to like
And live small.
and live small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if I'm afraid of what's going to happen, I'm going to limit myself. No, Siri, we cannot.
No, sorry. Scary is what got her.
Oh.
But
If I'm living in fear, I'm really worried about what could happen. Right? And I'm
Yep.
constantly thinking about all this bad stuff that could happen.
Yep.
And that's based off of this idea that things should be a certain way.
Yeah.
Requirements, expectations.
I lived that way for a long time.
But being loving, and it's
Yeah.
not, this is the thing that's interesting about lovingness. It's a way of being. So you do love,
Yeah.
but being loving
Yes.
is this heart-centered endeavor that requires me to be focused on my energy
Yeah.
and understand that the way that I show up authentically will help me almost like this radar. It will help me see with whom I should connect.
Yes.
And it will help me really know the people that actually do want to connect with me rather than shame, which just says, hey, go look for people who you think you want to connect to and then act like them and be like them, and then they'll accept you. But you can see developmentally
Yep.
how that's high schooly, that's
Yeah.
middle schooly.
Yeah.
And if you don't ever grow out of that, you're just chameleoning, adapting, changing yourself, trying to be like them, trying to be like him, trying to be like her. But what being loving is, what self-compassion is, what self-love is, as opposed to self-fear, like shame, as this was described here by, I don't who wrote this? Oh, I did. Wow.
You did a good job.
And I came up with this a while ago because what I realized as I worked with all these people is I'm afraid to be me.
Yeah.
Because if I'm too much like me, I'm going to be rejected.
And do you think it's because of comparison?
I think it's because of trauma, childhood trauma specifically.
Okay.
Because when I was my most authentic self and when I was my most vulnerable, I got rejected
Yes.
specifically by
True.
caregivers.
That's true. Yeah.
And so
okay.
that permeates and kind of like expands into other relationships. And so I take these little childhood beliefs that I'm going to be rejected if I'm authentic and real.
that you made about yourself when you didn't have a fully developed brain.
Sure, but because I was rejected by mom
Yes,
and dad.
yeah.
Straight up. I mean, that's just what happens.
that's what it is. Yeah.
And so that becomes my little mega story.
Yep.
Right? My negative self-belief system that runs all my fear.
Mm-hmm. And little Matt starts growing up with that belief and starts making that story bigger and bigger and bigger as he gets older and older and older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a really cool kind of like metaphor out of this book, The Mastery of Love. Dom Miguel Ruiz, amazing, wrote 4 Agreements, Mastery of Love. We got it right here. We'll show it to you.
It's really good.
I mean, this book is amazing. If you haven't read this book, definitely check it out. Amazing book. He tells this story. It's basically an anecdote, metaphor about a little boy and his father. And I'll repeat it here. Little boy goes into his dad's office and sees his dad's guitar in there. And the little boy asks Daddy, can we play the guitar? Pulls the guitar off the wall. Daddy and little boy have this beautiful moment. They play the guitar together. And the little boy creates this belief. I'm safe. I'm loved. Because he has this experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so now he associates that guitar with being safe and being loved. Dad leaves for work the next day. Little boy walks into daddy's office because daddy left the door unlocked, goes in there, grabs the guitar, puts it on the ground, starts playing it. Right? Leaves the guitar there on the floor, does that throughout the day. He's doing that in the evening, playing the guitar, and the door shuts, and the keys get slammed on the table, and then dad stomps into the room, looks down, sees the little boy there, grabs the guitar, smacks the little boy, says, "Don't touch my guitar." Puts the guitar back up on the wall. Dad walks out of the room. Little boy is sitting there in this room. What is the initial emotional experience that this boy is having?
No longer feels safe.
It's
He's
confusion.
confused. Yeah.
It's confusion. And this is the primary operating state of life. It's confusion. And we live in this confused state, trying to make sense of everything that's going on around us, using what we have at our disposal, our experience, our narratives, our resources around us to make sense of this insane thing called life.
Yeah.
And so I'm 4, 5, 6 years old. And I'm sitting there, I just got smacked by dad. Before, the guitar meant love and safety. And now the guitar means something. What does it mean? I got to assign some meaning.
Yeah. You got to make it
And
a story.
I gotta understand it.
You got to understand it. Yeah.
And in
like
comes
what
this
just
little
happened.
voice into my head. And it says, "You're bad. You deserve that. You should have known better. What's wrong with you?" Ladies and gentlemen, the inner critic.
Yeah.
And it develops from a very young age in these very pivotal moments. Small, seemingly small, but also huge. Because now, in this moment of confusion, I have this new inner critic voice that comes into me and says, "It's your fault. The reason why this happened is because of you." And it's our evolutionary attempt at finding some power in a moment of powerlessness. Because really, confusion is powerlessness. And my attempt at power and control is to blame who? Me. It's my fault. I did this. And that is the greatest lie we ever tell ourselves. Because why did that happen to that little boy? Why did he get smacked on the head? Why did he get in trouble?
It's his dad's something happened. His dad just wasn't in a good mood. He had his own story. I don't know. Yeah.
Life.
Life. I was like, not love. No.
Dads
life. Yeah.
get mad.
Yep.
That's the truth.
Yep.
Dads are irrational.
Yeah.
Dads are emotional. Dads don't understand all the circumstances. But as a little boy, before that moment, dad might not have been human. He might have been godlike and perfect and provide all the safety. But now I'm smacked in the head with reality that I can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
No, too big. I have to be able to trust dad. It's got to be my fault. And that pervasive story lingers. And you can see how different variations of this, and that's the pervasiveness of trauma. And so these little moments throughout our life, these little traumatic moments, that's what informs the inner critic's idea of me. And so this is one of the most important elements of learning how to cope with your shame is externalizing that voice that's in your head that tells you you're bad. That's not you. That's the inner critic. And what you understand as you begin to do work with shame and things like that is you can actually have a dialogue with this inner critic, and you can help this inner critic become less critical. And there are all sorts of really cool techniques and different ways to do this, but you have to first externalize that voice and understand that that voice in your head that tells you you're bad, that's not you. That's the inner critic. You are, quote unquote, true self. That's you. The energy, the loving, good part of you that is you, the part of you that is essentially eternal, has and will always exist. Your spirit, sometimes it's referred to, right? Your loving essence, your energy, whatever you want to call it, that's you. But that mentally, made up voice in your head.
The inner engineering book.
Yeah.
He talks about that, and he calls the inner critic your roommate. Because it doesn't go away. Like, you have this inner critic, but you can have a relationship with this inner critic, and you can work with this roommate and have a healthy relationship and help that inner critic be more positive, I guess you could say, like on an outlook on life and stuff like that.
Less fearful, more loving.
Yeah, less fearful, like lead with love instead of looking at it in a scarcity mentality, you know? So, yeah, I just liked that. That resonated with me when I was like, okay, this is my roommate and we got to get along because you're going to be living with me for the rest of my life. And so I feel like the first steps that I had to take with that inner critic, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I had to look inward and I had to figure out what were the beliefs did I come up when I was little with my inner critic voice, and how can we go about maybe looking back at those beliefs and changing them and then moving forward with more of a positive twist to it.
The beautiful thing that you did is you externalized the voice. The inner critic is not me.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked the question, what does my inner critic believe about me?
Mm-hmm.
Versus what do I believe about me?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite questions for people
Yeah.
is, what do you know that the inner critic doesn't?
Ooh, that's really good. Yeah.
And you can ask yourself that all the time. So I'm getting yelled at by my inner critic in the morning. You don't look good. You freaking shaved your beard off. What's wrong with you, stupid? You shouldn't have done that. You impulsive asshole, right? Like that's my inner critic, right?
Mhm.
Just constant
Yeah.
nagging, freaking blah, 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 right? And I can look at that inner critic and go, all right, buddy, what are you really worried about?
Mm.
I'm worried about being judged. I'm worried about that I make too many mistakes. Ooh, that really felt,
Yeah.
I can feel that in my body. I make too many mistakes. What do I know that the inner critic doesn't?
What do you know?
That
What
making
helped you?
mistakes is part of it.
Yeah.
That we can learn. That I'm not that little kid that I once was.
What about the judgment part?
That
You were worried about people judging you.
that I actually don't know people's judgments.
Yeah.
That people's judgments are actually my own ideas of their judgment,
Mhm.
and it's my judgments being magnified by them. And the inner critic goes, oh yeah, that is kind of true. And then I can literally say to the inner critic, hey man, I need you to relax. Just take a step back. I got this. Let me take the bus for a little bit. Drive the bus for a little bit. Let me take the reins for a little bit. It's okay. I got this. And over time, as you get to know this voice inside you, this part of you, right? The voice will become more aligned with you and it won't be so mean and critical, and it will soften. But it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of
Yeah,
work.
it
And
does.
it's helpful to have, somebody who's good at talking to the inner critic, the clinician who's trained in these methods, and they can teach you the techniques and the ins and outs. And you can read books on it. I mean, there's all sorts of different concepts about inner critic, and you can read any of the internal family system stuff we talk about on the podcast all the time. This is just a kind of a microcosm or an element of that idea that this is a part of you rather than you as yourself. Yeah,
Yeah. I wanted to read this
go for it.
because I really liked it. Where you wrote, shame is feeling bad about who one is, while guilt is feeling bad about one's actions.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between guilt, right? Like I did something bad versus shame as I am bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have experience with that as you've moved away from feeling like, oh, there's something so wrong with me, to more about like, oh, that thing I did doesn't work for me? Have you noticed that in your own life at all?
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of like a specific. I mean, I can always go back to, like us in the beginning.
Sure.
Like when we got pregnant with Ezra.
And they all know this story now because this episode will come out after your episode.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Hmm.
There's shame around that too. Or guilt. I don't know.
Shame around what?
Being scared of that coming out, of course.
Because we have not yet released
We
that
haven't
episode.
yet released it yet. Yeah.
But when people will listen to this, it will have released.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's the shame story there?
I think just like more so, am I being a bad person for sharing my experience of how other people made me feel throughout my life.
What do you mean?
I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings of sharing my story, but other people's actions and words affected my journey of where I am today in the beginning when I got pregnant, right? And getting pregnant already, not being married, I created a belief that like, oh, I must be a whore because I got pregnant. I must be like, not like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a credible woman.
Some variation of I'm bad.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. That I'm just a bad person.
Some variation of I'm not enough in this way.
100%. Like I'm not a good enough person, woman. And so that's why this is happening.
So you can see how that's about perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this idea given to us by one of the big five.
Yeah.
The educational institutions, the religious institutions, societal and cultural institutions, my family of origin, and the governmental institutions, right? Those inform our idea of how things should be, expectations, requirements.
Yeah.
And I judge myself
Off of where
that.
I hit those requirements.
So what's the requirement that you had for yourself? A woman should always...
She should get married before having a baby.
But I didn't.
But I didn't.
And therefore, I believe that I am...
going to hell. Didn't think that.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, I'm screwed now.
Going to hell, but more than that. Because you don't believe you're going to hell anymore. But now... there's still shame there because you're afraid that you're going to hurt other people's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And you can control that?
I can't control that.
So what's the shame then?
I guess the shame is maybe like, is it going to alter my relationship?
Let's try this. What does your inner critic say? Externalize the voice. What is that voice in your head saying to you?
Okay. That you should have just kept your mouth shut.
And
then we wouldn't be worrying about this right now.
And
everything would be fine.
And then?
Am I supposed to say something? I'm like, I don't know.
What does that say about who you are as a person? The fact that you can choose to or not say certain things and control other people's feelings. If I can't control other people's feelings, then I am.
If I can't control other people's feelings, I am. Well, I know I can't control other people's feelings.
So is that what you know that the inner critic doesn't?
Yes, probably.
Because the inner critic's worried about what?
What people are going to think.
And so what do you know that the inner critic doesn't?
We can't control what other people think.
And notice that as you make that realization, there's this physiological sense of relief.
Yeah.
And if you're watching at home, you could have seen it in her body. You were down, kind of sullen, kind of like pulled into yourself. And the moment you made that realization, there's that little chuckle, you pull back, your eyes literally brighten up, your jaw relaxes, your throat becomes exposed because there's a literal chemical, physiological response to shame that is protective in nature. I get small, I shrink, I become a smaller version of myself so that I don't what? Get rejected.
Get rejected, yeah.
Really, and what I've figured, in my thinking, this is what I've believe. I think that it always comes down to abandonment. I think that everything, I think that all trauma, everything, the very, very core center thing of all stuff is always abandonment. It's being left alone.
Mine's just being left out.
But that's abandonment.
No, it is abandonment. Yeah.
And it's my fault that I got left out.
Yeah.
And my fault that I'm alone.
Yeah.
That's the shame piece.
Yeah. Because then you go in and you're like, well, you're left out because you're too loud or you're too big or you talk too much or
So be small.
Yeah. Be small. That's my inner critic. Like be more not yourself.
And now you go back to all the stuff you heard about yourself as a kiddo in your family of origin. And you think about all the times you heard from very important figures in your life, maybe even godlike figures like your father, who told you were too loud and you cried too much and all these things, right?
Crybaby. Yeah. I know. I feel so sick to my stomach right now. Ugh. I hate the way shame makes you feel. I don't know.
But it's designed to teach us. If
Yeah.
you can listen to it and embrace that feeling and allow it for just a minute and externalize the feeling and say, this isn't the way that I feel. This is a part of me that's holding on to these stories that still affect my subconscious behaviors all day long, every day. Let's externalize it. What is the story? What is it that I am so, that this part of me is so deathly afraid of happening?
Yeah. It's almost like it made me think of the analogy where you and I, like when we like an argument or something, we're like, okay, what's the issue? Let's put the issue out on the table.
Yes.
So it's not like, hey, Matt, you're doing this. No, the issue is shame is making me feel this. So
My inner critic
my
said-
inner critic
yes.
is saying, so then put that on the table and look at it and then have a conversation with it.
Yeah. What is your inner critic saying to you right now? Saying,
To me right now.
yeah.
Well, I shouldn't even be talking about this. I'm not an expert.
And notice
And
how
I'm
that
feeling, I'm
notice
feeling
how
icky.
that core
Yeah.
story deep down is one of your core negative self-beliefs, which is what?
I'm not smart enough. I'm dumb. Yeah.
It's always right there. And it just takes a few minutes. But what's the truth?
And that's not true.
And it feels amazing to realize that you're this beautiful expert and all these people listen and watch because you're here.
Well, it's not even that like I'm an expert because I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Brindy.
And but I'm okay with that. The thing is that I just genuinely love helping people. And I just want to help people feel better about themselves because I, for so long, created so many stories that I wasn't good enough or smart enough or that I was enough. And I have been able to find a place for me that for Brindy, not comparing to anyone, but like looking at me, looking at who I am and how far I've become, I am enough and I am smart enough for me where I'm at. And I can help people if I keep listening to me, Brindy, not the inner critic, and follow that gut feeling with doing like living that. That's how I can help people. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I'm sitting in this chair today, because it is hard to be on a podcast and a camera looking at you and putting, this information out. And I actually was so excited to talk about shame. And then we turned on the cameras and I'm like, oh, I feel sick. I don't know if I want to talk about this, but I think it's such an important thing to talk about because we do all experience it. And it is hard to talk about. And I'd rather just turn the cameras off right now and just be done, but I'm going to push through because it's important to know that it's not me. It is my inner critic. And I loved how you said, like, if we can pull that out and see it for what it is and realize, like, you're right. I can't change other people's judgments. I can't compare myself to you because then I'm not the expert. But where I'm at today, I'm an expert for Brindy. So there's my rant. Wow. Sorry.
Yeah, people.
No, my stomach, I had to get that out. I'm like sweating right now. I'm like dying.
This is
I'm
the
like,
work,
what is
though.
going
Well,
on?
This is why I love that you pushed us to do this podcast, because I'll be super honest with the people. I was kind of done.
Yeah, you were done. I had to beg you.
Well, I was tired and
You did a lot of the work.
well, and we would do one a month and
Yeah,
it
it
just
wasn't
became
consistent.
something that it wasn't in the beginning.
Yeah.
And not really. I don't know. There was just a lot of steam behind it in the beginning. There's a lot of energy.
Just so many things changed. COVID happened. Let's be honest.
There's a lot of things that happened.
Yeah.
Well, and it got to the point where we'd release an episode and I'd get 4 or 5 calls in a week because we'd release one a month. And
Yeah.
I'd get 4 or 5 calls saying, hey, can I do therapy with you? And I'd be like, dude, I'm full. And I was referring out and I filled up like 4 of my friends. We filled up their private practices.
And that was the
just
point.
off of referrals, which was amazing, but I was exhausted.
That was the point of it in the beginning.
And then you came in and you're like, no, I
Mhm.
want to do it. And I want to go bigger. And I want to try to get even more vulnerable. And I was like, okay, sure.
I
And
just- yeah.
but what's happened, and even Brooke texted us the other day.
Yeah.
He listened to the happiness episodes, one of our really good friends, right?
Yeah.
He texted us the other day. And what did he say to you? Do you remember? Because I do.
Mm-mm. I don't remember. I have terrible memory. No, he
said-
was really sweet though. What did he say?
Terrible memory.
I-
Said the
I
inner
mean,
critic.
I'm not
Said the
supposed
inner
to say
critic.
that.
My inner critic thinks. No.
My inner critic thinks I have a terrible memory. I'm working on my memory. I'm getting better. What did he say? I forgot.
He was just
He was
praising
so
you
sweet.
up and
He
down
was.
for
That's
being
true, yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
And what he said was that I agree with wholeheartedly is watching this process of growth where you're owning yourself and you're authentic and you are, we won't use the term expert. We'll say you're an authority. And that's a amazing, beautiful thing
Yeah.
to watch you grow into this person who I've always seen you as.
Yeah.
And aren't we our own biggest critics? But when we really understand the psychology behind it, it's our inner critic's voice that is just really loud. And we need to align and befriend that voice, because that voice that is the critical voice within my head, maybe it's not as helpful as it thinks it is.
Yes.
And you can teach that voice inside your head how unhelpful it really is by just showing it how unhelpful it really is.
Yep.
But you can't do that until you actually do that.
Yeah. You have to have like the awareness of that actually
Yes.
happening. And I think that's where I had a big aha moment, was like, whoa, I talk so negatively in my head, and that's not going to work. Like, I can't continue going down this. And so I think the biggest thing for people who are, going through a healing experience, journey, whatever, is like, knowledge is key. I will say that has been the biggest thing in my healing journey, is learning why I do the things that I do, and being more educated on how my brain works, and learning about the inner critic, learning about shame. And we don't learn these things in school growing up or anything. And we're just taught to like be tough and keep going and stuff like that. So if you're out there and you're struggling and you're having a hard time right now, like, my advice to you is start learning. Like, really.
Yeah.
Open.
And that's why we started doing these education podcasts.
That's why, that's why we're here today,
It
is
is.
we want to help people. Like, that's our biggest thing, is we want to help you understand yourself.
I love it.
Yeah.
I
So-
actually think that's a fantastic way to end this. I really do. We want it to be short. We're 45 minutes in. Do you want to do more?
No, did we cover enough? Did we?
Well,
Can I do it?
did I do enough, Ryan says?
Did we do enough?
We can do, okay, let's
you're
do
right.
one more thing.
Yeah.
We can do one more. Okay,
Okay.
let's do number 5.
Yes. Let's do
Okay,
number 5.
we'll end with
Okay.
number 5.
Okay.
Okay. So, what Brene Brown teaches is, and this is a big part of shame. Shame lives in our stories.
100%.
So you notice what the inner critic grasps onto is a story.
Mhm.
It's a reflection of self. It's an idea of self. It's how I see myself. It's how the inner critic sees me. And that story is, I'm not enough, or I'm too much, or I'm too little, or I'm not powerful enough, or I'm too ugly enough. I don't know, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's all these not enough things. And what ends up happening is the story we tell ourselves is only the story that I ever hear.
Yeah.
And I keep telling myself this story over and over. And me and the inner critic just have this inner dialogue going on
And you're creating
about how
your own
bad I
world.
am.
Yeah.
And I never tell anybody that I think I'm bad.
Yep.
And so what she found is that when you start to actually authentically tell your story, you begin to see the truth. You begin to see reality. You begin to see how beautiful and powerful and strong and incredible you really are. Because look at what you've done. Look at what you've been through. Look at what you've survived. Look at who you've become. But you can't realize who you've become until you actually say who you've become.
I love it.
And so thank you for reminding me of that, because that's why I did this. That's why this whole thing, that's why this whole thing started, because I sit and I hear people tell their bullshit stories, and they tell me why they're not enough. And they tell me that their life is horrible, and they tell me that they deserve all these bad things. And they tell me they want to die. And it's never true. And so I say, okay, tell me your story. And they tell me their story. And in an hour, they go through this list. And it's mind-blowing to hear how many things you've survived, you've come through, you've overcome, how far you've come. And in 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, look what you've done. And you just say that to somebody and they go, oh my gosh, you're right. Look what I've become.
It's beautiful.
And it changes everything.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, look what you've become.
Well,
Look what you've been. All that horrible, awful stuff you never want to talk about, all the trauma, all the pain, all the hurt. When you tell that story,
you own that story.
You own that story, and you realize that that is who you are. You're the overcomer.
Yeah, you're not the character in your story. You're the author. And I think once you make that connection that you're the author and you get to write it, then you really start owning your life. You really start being aware of your intentions and your actions and how you want to move forward. So be the author, not the character. This was hard.
That's how we were supposed to end it.
This was hard. Oh.
Well, thank you for doing this. This was not an easy one.
No, was it?
Yeah.
But thank you. I love you.
Well, especially after, and I think we will have released the Crafts story before this one. And some people like the shorter ones better, but if you get a chance to go, please listen to the episode with Jeremy and Kristen Kraft. They tell their, we just recorded it today, so it's very fresh.
Yeah. Beautiful story.
Unbelievable. Talk about powerful people who own their story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And being down and getting knocked down again, and you get to write it how you want to show up.
And
they're writing it
again.
Yep.
I mean, he came in here.
Yeah.
And he tells us. I mean, go listen to it. You'll hear.
Go listen to it.
He just got this gnarly thing that just happened.
Yeah.
And he's got to deal with another thing. And he's a powerful man, and she is a powerful woman. Anyways, how blessed we are to get to do this. So thank you, listeners out there and followers and all your people who keep supporting us. And we're excited because in the very near future, we are going to bring to you an incredible event. So stay tuned to that. Hopefully by the time this is out, you will already know what that is. But we're in July, we're going to do an event with 1090, and it's going to be amazing. And we're super excited. We're putting it together right now. So can't wait to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Finding Strength podcast is sponsored by Avantacool.
Avantacool.
Avantacool. It's a fun word to say.
It is a fun word to say. What is Avantacool, Matt?
Avantacool sells cold plunges. Avantacool sells infrared saunas. Check out Avantacool at avantacool.com. If you use the code STRENGTH24, you will get a discount of 25% off any Avantacool products. How amazing is that?
That's a good discount. It really is.
Do you like our cold plunge?
I love it.
It's nice, huh?
It is really nice.
It's great.
Stays clean.
Stays clean.
Perfect. Whatever temperature I want it to be at, I can set that, and it's great.
Yep. We love it.
Go
Worth
check them out.
every penny. Check them out. Avantacool.com.